Hey everybody, welcome to Ron Line Report. Today's guest, one of my absolute favorite human beings on planet Earth. I'm not even kidding. 8-time Mr. Olympia, first NPC national champion, the living legend, totally awesome, Lee Haney. Welcome back. He was in.
Hey, Ron, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing great. So you're a little jet lagged. You spent a few days in Italy?
Oh yeah, man. Had a great time. Guest of Panada, fantastic equipment, the best in the world, if you ask me, and had a great time. I was there with Ronnie, Phil Heath, Bob Tech, Rubio. He was there, so I had a chance to see him, the new up and coming talent, and then of course Abani. He was there too from Iran, so it was a fantastic time together.
Right on. Well, I always love talking to you, but this time I thought to contact you because you were in the bodybuilding news, Lee, about a week ago. You're aware of this, right?
I'm very aware.
Okay. Yeah, I would hope so. So it was a podcast. I don't know. It was a major podcast, not like this one. But this is the quote that everybody took from it that ran. Bodybuilding has lost its way and appeal to the general population. No longer is it being showcased as it was in times past. This is apparent to the teenage athlete that I'm greeted by in my travels. There needs to be a reset before our sport comes crashing down. However, let's keep hope alive by making the necessary changes to save our sport. So that went viral. It was on everybody's Instagram page. Millions of people saw it. Thousands and thousands commented. So I thought I want to get Leon because I'm from your era. I'm old school. So I was around in those days when you were competing. And the very first magazine I picked up, a Flex magazine in fall of '87 that inspired me. I actually became a bodybuilder. The day I picked up that magazine, you were inside. Sean Ray, Rich Gaspari, Barry DeMay, Lila Brada, Mike Christian, Gary Stridham. It was just, for me, that was a magical, magical era. I think a lot of guys would say whenever they got into it was, but I wanted to get on and talk to you about the changes that could be made because I want either one of us to come across as the old guys saying our era was better and this era is horrible. You guys stink. Let's try to come up with some ideas, some ways that things could change and make the sport better. So first and foremost, what's the biggest thing that you think needs to change or could change?
Well, I feel, and I really want this to be communicated the right way. I wasn't speaking about a reset of bodybuilding as a whole. We both know statistically that the largest, let's say, category of our sport that's still growing is that of classic physique.
Yeah.
You know, we have people like Chris Bumstead, you know, and the guys that are competing on that level. They're beautiful, and the general public run to them. I mean, the numbers are real, and so they speak for themselves. Whereby, when you look at the open class in bodybuilding, the numbers don't add up in comparison.
Yeah.
Then I listen to what these kids are saying, you know, as I travel from Italy to Germany and here throughout the United States. They're saying, we love what we saw during the old school years of bodybuilding. We love the symmetry, the balance. We love that. That's why we fell in love with the sport. And then many of them are commenting saying, well, I don't want to look like these guys in the open class. You know, they're too big, and I don't want to have to resort to dying prematurely because of where bodybuilding is now. I have teenagers that are saying this. So that says that there's an imbalance somewhere. Now, I'm speaking not of the classic or the physique, but I'm speaking of the open class.
Yeah.
And particularly when you talk about the comparisons, when you have a guy that's 5'7", 5'6", and he's weighing over 300 pounds in off season, then he's on the stage at 260 pounds or 250 at that height. It looks odd, number one. It doesn't fit the physique. Now, when I say fit the physique, I'm saying what the criteria was during yesteryear. And yesteryear said to me, said to you, said to the reason why we wanted to become a bodybuilder is that it looked good. Symmetry, good muscle separation, great presentation, the thing that made our sport something that the general public drew to and that got kids excited. I mean, I used to rush to the magazine stands and couldn't wait to flip it over, to take a look at Arnold and Robbie and Frank Zane and Chris Dixon, all of these beautiful physiques. That's what I wanted to look like. And that's what I geared my training around, looking like that. But that's also the culture that was being communicated during that time, during those years. That what the culture said. And as I said on other broadcasts with you, Ron, 1984, I was 243 pounds. 1991, I was 254 pounds. I had to make sure, and it was demanded during that time, that my symmetry and my balance always be in check. Not having a thick, wide waist, not having imbalanced symmetry. So all of that was important. You look at all the great bodybuilders of that time, that's what we aspired to look like. So somewhere along the way, our sport is taking the, it took the, I guess the foot has been taken off the gas. We put too much, we got our foot too heavy on the gas.
Yeah.
And we went too fast, too quick. And the things such as symmetry, balance, presentation has been lost in the shuffle. And that's what I'm getting to. I'm not, and what you see on the stage of bodybuilding, when you see guys that are that height and that heavy, carrying that kind of weight, it's not their fault. What the industry is saying is it's okay to look like that. And so they become what the industry says it's okay to become. Or what the industry is saying, that's what we want to see. Well, who is the we? I mean, I really fault the judges with where we are, period. They say, well, you can only judge what you see. Well, you judging what you're demanding. If you say, okay, we want to see tapering waist, we want to see great presentation, we want to see symmetry, then if you're going to have that as your goal or your standard, then that's the way, that's what it should be. If you're saying, okay, we're just interested in conditioning, which what I see now, so symmetry is not a part of the equation as to what I'm speaking of that I see on the stage now. I'm not saying all the athletes, I'm saying many of them. When you see guys arguing about first, second, or third, and they, when you have a shorter guy carrying that kind of size, which looks awkward, looks very awkward, doesn't look good, there's no symmetry there, there's no balance. It's just a bunch of muscle that it doesn't fit properly. Wide waist, big awkward looking shoulders, huge arms, huge thighs, no taper, none of that. Just a bunch of muscle, as though somebody closed their eyes, just slung muscle everywhere. That's what I'm talking about. And then the other thing you got to look at, what does it take to look like that? You know how much gear these guys have to use to look like that, to create a physique like that the sport is saying, yeah, we want to see more of that. Yeah. More of that is going to cause these young athletes to die prematurely. We already see it. Our sport does not have to be the most dangerous sport in the world. Was it meant to be that way? When you look at Albert Beckers, 88 years old, you look at Frank Zane, 78. You look at Robbie around 78. You look at Arnold. You look at Chris Dixon past the age of 82. You look at Bill Pearl. Bill Pearl was like 90 when he passed. Yeah. I mean, you look at Dave Draper. You look at all of these athletes that were there, the originals, and how long they lived. I mean, I'm 65 now. I feel great. No joint problems, all of the good stuff. But I've always made sure my health was a priority. we're into this thing for our health. At least we was at one time. Do we care anymore about how long these kids live? You know, where are we? If I'm wrong, and the only concern is about, okay, let's just whatever, you know, just let it be, then okay, I'm in the wrong place. Okay. You know, but I care about these athletes. I care about my own health. 65, I'm a granddad. I feel good. I want these guys to experience being a grandpa one day too. But at the current state of what's happening in the open class, it ain't gonna happen. Now listen, I'm not throwing any shade on physiques like Andrew Jack or like Samson or Barney or Hardy. These guys are beautiful. They are masterpieces, and they carry this type of size with no problem. They got good balance, good muscle separation. Now Hardy's a whole nother level. I mean, Hardy's Japan, man. You know, as far as conditioning, it's hard to get past Hardy. Hardy looks great. And he's not a tall guy. So it's not a height thing that I'm concerned with. It's what these guys are having to do now to please this new era of this is what we want to see. Who is we? Who is we? And I sort of question the legitimacy of some judges. You know, when you argue about, okay, you know, let's say, for instance, let's say the height of Nick Walker and the size that he carried, that's very awkward for his height. It is nothing balanced and symmetrical about him whatsoever. Condition-wise, yes, Nick is in incredible condition. Bless his soul, I hope he make all the money to take care of his family. And I wish all of that on athletes, but I more so hope that he's in great health for years down the road. And I hope that the industry is not continuing to push young athletes, you know, Nick and the up and coming athletes, and including Derek also, to do things that are not natural for their bodies. To walk around at 300 pounds in off season and you're 5'6", 5'7", it's nothing natural about that. And nothing good can come of it. I said a lot, Ron, but I wanted to make sure the listeners understand where I'm coming from. I'm not coming from a place of hate or jealousy. I'm not talking that.
Right.
I'm talking about health, fitness, wellness. I'm talking about the general population, you know, admiring who we are, what we are. I'm talking about the kids coming up that want to become bodybuilders, and they're scared to death concerning what's needed to go to these different levels. That's what I'm talking about. As a father would speak, listen, sometimes you have to save people from themselves.
True. Let me just bring this up. This was the '88 Olympia. So this was 37 years ago. So we're talking about guys competing now. I wonder how many of them are going to be in good health and thriving 37 years from now. We got Barry DeMay, Rich Gaspari, Lee Labrada, yourself, Gary Stridham, and Mike Quinn. The only one who's not with us anymore is Mike, but Mike had recreational drug issues, and I don't think it was necessarily the gear and things like that were responsible for him not living a long, healthy life. But everybody else on this stage right now is still not only alive and well, but looks still training, still looking Barry DeMay looks fantastic. Lee Labrada looks fantastic. Rich still trains hard every day. I mean, I don't know if, and I don't want to sound like a hater either. I don't know if these guys right now, are they going to be around in 37 years? If so, are they going to be in good health? Are they going to be looking great, feeling great? I hope so. I wish the best for all these guys. You know, you and I both, we love the sport, and we have the utmost love and admiration and respect for all these guys, because it's a tough sport. And, you know, we share that. We all share the same passion. So we wish the best for everybody in every aspect. Yes. Healthy, wealthy, wise, love, you know, like you said, you're 65 years old. You're enjoying life with your grandchildren. I mean, I want everybody, you know, I want everyone to have that same opportunity to live a long, healthy life and relax in your older years and enjoy your grandchildren and travel and just do all those things that we look forward to as young men.
Yep, exactly. And that's all I'm saying, you know, and of course, the choice is the athletes, but and again, the industry have to make up its mind which way we want to go here. And I think some judges need to become recertified. But even with that, the industry have to make up its mind. Okay, where are we going? Which direction do we want to take? Yeah. And I really admire the fact there's several different classes and several different ones to choose from, which gives everybody a place to compete. But I think guys at a certain height, when they're forced to put on, and because the industry is given a stamp of approval to turn the guy that's 5'6", 5'7" into a 240, 250 pound guy, something's wrong with that. It doesn't look right. And then what it takes to do that, the kind of gear it takes to do that is hazardous and it's very dangerous.
Yeah. So, I mean, I never have, and I never will ask you what you did in terms of that, but in your era, do you have any idea? Let's just say the 80s in general, because now it's very common that I hear guys using 4 grams of 2 to 4 grams of testosterone a week, a gram of tren, a gram of it totals out to something between 4 and 6 grams for a lot of these guys for the gear. 10 to 20 grams, IUs of GH a day. In the 80s, did you guys talk to each other? Do you know was there a standard amount that was lower? Because when you say that, what's it take for these guys to look like that now, you have to sort of compare it to what was being used back then. Do you have any idea?
Well, the deal is, Ron, we were very, let's say, matter of fact, when it came to training and nutrition. We were scientists. We just didn't do something just to be doing it. When I won the Teenage America, I was 212 pounds, all natural. I won the junior, I won the Mr. South, the Mr. Palmetto at 218 pounds, placed 4th in the Mr. USA, natural, 224 pounds.
Wow.
So the foundation of training, the foundation of good quality nutrition was already in place. Okay. So what we would do was only use just enough gear to polish up, not to put on size. That was never our goal, to put on a lot of size. Yeah. Because we knew that putting on too much size would destroy the balance and the symmetry of the physique. Okay. So it was just a polishing, just a polishing of the things that we incorporated. There's stuff out there now. I can't even tell you what it is, but I hear about the amounts these guys are using, but it's because of the demand that's being placed upon it. It's not their fault.
Right.
Not their fault. The industry, it could say, well, listen, we want to see a taper in waist. We don't, at one time, remember it was all in the news about a bloated gut. I mean, you even heard Arnold talk about it.
Bubble gut.
Guess what? All of a sudden, we started to reset at that time. So now we don't want to see bloated guts. I mean, that was everywhere. And then all of a sudden you had, the Mr. Olympia that passed, Sean Roden.
Oh, yeah.
Sean was a breath of fresh air coming back. Had that nice tapering waist. He looked good. No bloated gut. Then you had Duran came along. Duran was, after me, size. Duran had real good balance to his physique. No bloated gut. And then, then you sort of kept that, but all of a sudden, the mass things start to take over the symmetry, balance, and the presentation. So there was a system whereby the scores, there were 3 different categories to be scored. Symmetry has been thrown away.
Correct.
Also, posing presentation has been thrown away.
Yep, those were around.
What you see now, the one with the best condition, the one with the best striations up their butt. That'll be our winner. He's got to be dry. He's got to be hard. That's all we're looking for, which means you have judges that don't know diddly crap about the integrity of the sport as it was and as it should be now. That's what I'm talking about. Okay. If you say, okay, we don't want that no more. Okay, I'll just be quiet and you guys do what you want to do. you know. But if you want to do it right and you want it to have health, if you want it to be admirable in the eyes of the general population, then that's what we got to do. You know, you remember a time when the wide world of sport was covering us, NBC was covering us.
Yeah.
Remember we had a show on ESPN, you know, everybody wanted to look like bodybuilders. Everybody wanted to look like bodybuilders. How many are saying that now? None.
Yeah, this was I'm showing a clip of you had a weekly workout show for years.
Yeah, Lee Haney's championship workout, you know, then there was a body shaping. Everybody wanted to look and be like us. Nobody's saying that anymore. And I wonder why.
Well, yeah, I was going to get into the mainstream thing, but I want to wrap up the gear conversation with this question. I know it was very common in the Arnold Schwarzenegger, Robbie Robinson, Frank Zane era for the guys they train naturally most of the year, and you would see them sort of downsize if you saw pictures of them from so-called off season. They weren't trying to get big and huge in the off season, bulk up and then diet down. They would get on the gear, I don't know, 12 weeks, 16 weeks out from a competition, and they would quote unquote grow into a show because they'd be putting on muscle as they were losing fat, which we don't see that now because the guys, like you said, they'll get up to 300 pounds and then they'll diet down. So they're always on. It's blast and cruise. They're either on a ton or they're on a little bit less, but they're always on. In the 1980s, from talking to your peers, was it still the case where guys would train naturally most of the year, or by that point were they on gear most of the year?
No, they were not on gear for the most of the year. It was, if anything, during that time we practiced what it was a 8-week cycle. Then we would go to, and then those cycles, we use just a small amount, or maybe a test, or maybe a DECA, or Anavar. Very small amounts, like a 1 cc a week or something like that. Half a cc a DECA, 1 cc a test. And then we would use a bit of the Anavar. But it was only for 8 weeks. And after that, 2 weeks would be HCG to reboot the system, and then you would be off because you really get the greatest results once you go into the HCG because your body kicks in with whatever still remnants is hanging out there synthetically.
Yeah.
So the body really experienced a growth then. So you would stay off for about a month and a half to 2 months.
Okay.
And then only do small cycles, and then like 12 weeks away. Then you would do your long 12-week cycle. And again, that was very minute. You grew basically without a doubt, from the training and good quality nutrition. And we didn't get fat in all season. So we would always train up for a show. You never saw the legends of the sport get fat in all season. Not Arnold, not Robbie, not Danny Padilla, not Chris Dickerson. None of the guys would ever do that. I've never seen a fat old school bodybuilder. I've never seen that.
True. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to throw Ronnie Coleman under the bus, but I think it's a good example because you talked about you turned pro weighing about 230 pounds. Is that correct?
I turned pro. I won the IFBB World Championship weighing 232 pounds. Yes.
And you were 5'11", same as Ronnie, same as Dorian. You guys were all 5'11". Your last Olympia, 254.
Right.
And that was 9 years later.
Exactly.
So in 9 years, you went from 232 to 254. If you do the math, it's a few pounds of muscle a year. It's nothing earth shattering. By the time Ronnie came around, Ronnie was followed Dorian. So the level of expectancy of how massive you were supposed to be had dramatically increased because Dorian was winning Olympias right around 255, 260. And then Ronnie took it to another level. So Ronnie turned pro naturally, which I believe, and every time I say that, I get blasted by saying either you're lying, Ron, because you want Ronnie to look good, or you're just a moron and you believe everything people say. But I honestly believe, because Ronnie turned pro at about 215. That's all he was when he won. He won the World Amateur Championships in Poland, I think it was 1991, the same year you retired with 8 Olympias. And he would eventually become on stage as heavy as 296 pounds. So that is an enormous increase in muscle mass. And I'm not saying Ronnie was, abusive with the gear, but I would hazard to say he probably used more than you did if he put on that much more muscle mass, because yeah, he's got awesome genetics, but come on, I don't think anyone would argue Lee Haney had some of the best genetics of all time as well. Like I said, as a teenager, you were competing well over 200 pounds. You know, you look like a grown man at age 18 on stage. So
yeah, if you put Ronnie Coleman's mom and my mom together, they look exactly like sisters.
Really?
Yeah, my mom was 5'11" and a half, 200 pounds. My dad was 5'11", 220 pounds.
Yeah.
So genetics definitely worked in our favor. Well, I'll say with Ronnie, see, the body works in the way of demand and supply. Ronnie came from the world of powerlifting. When you look at powerlifters, these are some huge individuals. Those are some big human beings.
Yeah.
And since the body do work in the way of demand and supply, the more physical stress you give to a muscle, particularly in the way of the basic fundamental power movements, the body will compensate with size. Now, you add some gear to that, you're talking supersizing. Because Ronnie used super weight. I never used that kind of weight. Ronnie was throwing stuff around. My deal was that of Robbie and Arnold, the mind and the muscle connection. We wanted to feel the weight. Ronnie just pushed the weight. That's a whole different kind of world. And I strongly feel because of using that type of poundage coming from the powerlifting mentality and using it in the sport of bodybuilding allowed him to be the biggest bodybuilder ever. But it also allowed for a lot of injuries, and Dorian faced the same thing. Dorian he recently had his hip replaced. I think he's tore his tricep off the bone. There were several injuries that take place using that kind of weight.
Yeah, I mean, we've said this before because it's astonishing to me that 8 Olympias and your 8 Olympia titles, 65 years old, no joint replacements. You've never torn a muscle, correct? Nothing?
Nothing.
And you're no pain. You get out of bed and you're not like, ah.
No, none of that, man. I just finished back and shoulder superset a few minutes ago, along with abs, and I stretch in between sets. And somebody else I really want to point out that I had a chance to spend time with was Phil Heath. I was with Phil there in Germany as we represented Panada, and we were also there in Italy together. And I really admire what Phil was able to accomplish with his physique. And I mean, Phil is not injured. I mean, he turned what was not supposed to be. How do a basketball guard become a Mr. Olympia? That's some of the best of bodybuilding engineering that I've ever seen. So I just got hands off the field. I told myself, man, I don't know how you did that. But it was the engineering at its best. And I think Honey Rumbach had a lot to do with that, with field determination and tenacity. Bar none. He's a whole nother level. And that came by way of training, good nutrition, understanding the science.
Yeah, we're looking at some of the Panadas because you guys are all hanging out in Italy over the weekend together.
Yes, we had a great time. And Rudy Panada, man, he's the best host ever, man. You can't get better than Rudy. He loves the sport of bodybuilding. He's 73. He looks great. You should see this picture of him and Rubio doing the most muscular pose together. I mean, he's holding his own for a 73-year-old, for a 50-year-old, if you ask me.
You guys got jerseys and everything. Wow, look at that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, Panada is the best. We love it.
Rudy, if you're listening, hook a brother up. I'd love to come over. There he is, right there. There's Rudy.
Yeah, there he is. He's a man.
So the only other big thing I wanted to address is the other issue people had was they felt when you said bodybuilding wasn't as appealing to the mainstream anymore, you got a lot of pushback on that because they pointed out the fact that, well, we have, people like Sam Solik who have, 20 million followers and all the social media stars. And it's just, there's so much more awareness of bodybuilding. We have all these different divisions. The money is better now. I mean, I think, what was your biggest payday for winning the Mr. Olympia in 1991?
I think about $60,000, maybe 65. Yeah.
So Samson just got 10 times that last fall.
Yeah.
And Arnold Schwarzenegger has raised the bar again. So next March, somebody's going to get $750,000 first prize. So that's what people would say is like, Lee, how could you say it doesn't have mainstream appeal when we have millions of people over the world following bodybuilders on their phones? Whereas back in the day, you could say it was more of a cultish sport where it was like a little clique of us. It was worldwide, but it was a smaller amount of people. So how do you answer that when people say, Lee, look at how popular it is today compared to then?
Well, because of social media, and you have a lot of what you call social media influencers that understand how to get clicks and how to grow their business.
Yeah.
And a word of caution to that itself is that a lot of these people you have with the Trend Twins and these guys on here boasting about gear and how much they use.
Yeah.
A lot of that is not good for our sport, and then a lot of these guys that's doing this stuff, they're not recognized as being a Mr. World or Mr. NPC national champion or anything. They just understand social media. And you can always get a lot of blind followers. Anybody can do that. Yeah. But, the cream always rises to the top. So, you can get 1 million people, thousands of people that's blind, and blind leads blind people sometimes. Yeah. But how much of that is coming by way of people who really understand what they're talking about, who's putting good, safe information out there. That's the danger of social media. You can get a lot of bad information there. So, let them do their thing, fine. The influence is great, fine, do your thing. Yeah. But I'm over here to make sure that this next generation of bodybuilders remain safe. This year at the Lee Haney Games, we're going to have a teenage division, for teenagers, because that doesn't exist anymore, under the NPC. And I had mentioned to Mr. Mannion a few years back, I said, Jim, the IFS, that's my certification organization, wants to be sort of a feeder into the sport by having the teenage division, So anyway, we're in the process of doing that now for teens interested in competing in our show. It's going to be about symmetry. It's going to be about presentation. It's going to be about overall balance. It's not going to be about super conditioning and that only. It's going to be a combination of things that'll determine who the winner will be. And we'll make sure we have good qualified judges who know what that should look like. Right on. So my deal is building real stuff, not just this fly-by-night crap. Because just one push of the button, social media can change stuff just like that. AI can change. What are we looking at here? Yeah.
So, you brought up a good point there. Back in when I was reading the magazines and when I started following the sport back in the mid to late 80s and throughout the 90s even, it was very rare that any bodybuilders ever came out and talked about their PED use, the gear use. So a lot of these current guys, they're very what they call transparent. They'll tell you flat out, this is what I use. And they're hailed as heroes by the young generation now because they're so honest. And you guys were keeping the secrets from them, and you were lying. And Joe Weider was selling all these supplements and making us believe guys like you and Gaspari and we're all natural. But the thing that I'm seeing is so many young guys now, young teenagers, as young as 13, 14, they're jumping into using steroids, not only steroids, but Tren, which Tren is so powerful and toxic. You guys used Parabolin back in the day, which was 76 milligram ampules, 1 or 2 a week is all that was used typically. Some of these kids are using 500 milligrams, a gram of Tren a week. They still look like they're natural. There's covered in acne, gyno. I see like 18-year-old kids with hairlines up to here now. So that begs the question, are we really better off now having so much honesty and transparency about drugs as opposed to the old days when it wasn't really spoken about and it was thought of as a quote unquote finishing touch? The youngsters hate when we use that term. They hate it because they say you never would have looked like that without steroids. So stop calling it finishing touch. But at the same time, I don't remember seeing an epidemic of teenagers on steroids back then. There were young kids on drugs, but it's nothing to the degree that I see now. So is that what you're talking about with the youngsters today, the teenagers that you meet?
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And what a lot of them don't understand and the ones that's putting this crazy information out there is that, you know, I've met teens in recent shows. They look great. Their testosterone level is out of the roof. When they take a pee, they can pee from here to 50 feet ahead of them
Yeah,
because of their pee levels.
It's a healthy
And then the
prostate.
growth hormone is so high, they don't need this kind of a stuff. Whenever you start putting gear in your body and you're in your teen, your puberty years and so forth, it shuts your system down.
Right.
And it makes your system rely on that. So your ability to continue to grow muscle beyond using enhancements is going to be very, very slim. If anything, it's going to stunt the ability of your body to continue to grow in a natural way.
Yeah.
So I would never advise that during the teen years. I wouldn't advise it until you won the Creekwater USA. And most guys haven't even done that. All of a sudden they're on gear. And, you know, it's like giving a 15-year-old a Maserati. You know, what is he going to do? The first 10 minutes in the thing, he's probably going to wrap around the tree and kill himself.
Yeah.
That's why I say sometimes you have to save, sometimes you have to help people save themselves.
Yeah.
And that's what our sport needs to do. So when you get people on these social media influencers out there, you're going to have some people going to listen to what I have to say, what you got to say, Ron, but then you're going to have some, they don't know what they're talking about. Kids have always been like that. That's why you have to train up a child in the way it should go. That's what you have to do. You have to train up a child, but they got to be a willing hearers to receive wisdom, receive information the right way. If not, then, you know, they'll sooner or later they'll find out the truth. Yeah. And when you're young, you can be very vulnerable when you're young. You believe everything that somebody tells you, especially if you got a muscle.
Well, the ironic thing, the crazy thing to me is when I hear from a lot of these young kids, they put a lot more credibility and belief in people who are close to their age who have very little experience. You're going to listen to someone who's 20, 21 years old, tell you all about gear and everything, and it's perfectly safe, and this is how much you should run. And somebody who's 35, 40, 50 years old, who's been doing this for decades, has all that experience, they totally dismiss them as they don't know anything. They're just old heads, old guys. I'm going to listen to this kid who's, 2 or 3 years older than me. He's been bodybuilding for 3 or 4 years, and he's going to be my expert instead of someone who's been around forever and has, learned from the best coaches and athletes.
And Ron, one of the things that, as you just mentioned, that comes to mind is everyone that has stepped on the stage, whether it's the NPC Nationals, whether it's the World Championships, which, they don't exist anymore, or anybody on a professional level, their mindset is not that you just mentioned. That's the mindset of a kid, of a youngster. Yeah. They never make it to professional stage. They burn out soon, or something tragic happened to them, or they wreck their system. So they never get there. Yeah. Anyone on the top level, any true Olympians would differ from the mindset of some of these young people that are following influencers, because we know better. When you've been there, done that, you know better. You just shake your head and shrug your shoulders and, well, they'll learn sooner or later. Sometimes, you've a burnt child dreads fire. So sometimes the fire have to hit their feet before the eyes of their understanding be made open.
Yeah. Yeah, because people, like I said, it's not unusual for young guys to start on steroids, but I've watched personally many guys start 17, 18 years old, 19, whatever. And I'd say the vast majority of them, they were done with bodybuilding for one reason or another. Either they burnt out physically or mentally, had a health problem. They had no longevity. That the people that do were few and far between. The ones who waited a few years and built a natural foundation of size and strength, then added the gear once they had their bodies all figured out and they were, mentally and emotionally more mature. Those are the ones that lasted the longest. And it's, I can attest to that because I've seen it personally, up close and personal, hundreds, thousands of cases over the years.
Yep. And Ron, the guys that when I won the Teenage America back in 1979, the guys who started with me, I don't know where any of them are.
Wow.
Haven't heard from any of them. One I talked to via the internet, a messenger, probably a year or so ago. But of course, he's not competing anymore. But that's the only one out of a whole group of people that was in the top 6, top 5 that was at the Teenage America. And I mean, at that time, it wasn't a matter of using a lot of gear. It was just training and determination and nutrition and sticking with it. So a lot of them have dropped by the wayside, period, without influencers. They just didn't have the heart for it.
Yeah. No, I mean, if somebody is 55, 60 years old and they've been bodybuilding since teenage years and they're still doing it, I'd say they're the 1%.
Exactly. Yeah.
Less than 1%. Yeah. I mean, someone like someone with you that's still training hard and injury free, I'd say that puts you in a point. Let's put 10 zeros in a 1%. A lot of those in a 1. Man,
I tell you what, Rod, man, when I was walking through the airport, going to different gates, as I was coming home from Italy, man, you know what? I am so happy and so glad that I followed the rules of health and fitness and stimulate, don't annihilate, because, man, those were some long walks. I didn't run out of air. My hips wasn't hurting. My back wasn't hurting. My knees wasn't hurting. Everything was good. And I was so thankful that I was able to physically do that without being in pain. Yeah. Not many can say that.
I mean, you didn't have to have, the carts that they drive people around on to the gates. You didn't have to hop on one of those, did you?
No, I didn't. I thought about it, but but no, I didn't. And that's a blessing, man. I thank the Lord every day for my health. Yeah. But I've always been focused on being healthy. Because when we train for competitions, like I said, when I trained Evander Holifield, I was actually sprinting and running with Evander. Wow. As I trained for the Mr. Olympia competition.
The world
during that time, man, we did, we did sprints and plyos and karaoke drills and that kind of thing to be conditioned. Yeah. We just didn't turn into a big old blob and walk around like a big bull out of shape and not overweight in all season.
So you were training with Evander for his world heavyweight boxing match, doing the same training alongside him.
That's right.
And you were Mr. Olympia at the time.
Yep. Matter of fact, in 1990, Evander came. He was there at the Mr. Olympia competition to support me because I was there at the training camp helping to train him. There's shots of me and him together at that Olympia too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder, I'm not putting the guys down today, but I just wonder how many of them could do that, train like a world-class professional boxer if they had to. Probably very few.
Yeah, very few. That's a whole nother world there.
I mean, but I wouldn't expect them to. It's sports specific. I wouldn't expect anybody to go through that. But for you to hear that you were able to do it, I'm very impressed. I've done kickboxing years ago, and that was a lot of the cardio demands with the sparring and stuff were just intense, very intense.
Oh yeah. Now I didn't get in the ring, Ron.
Okay, fair enough.
I just did some sprints and plyos with it, that kind of deal.
So I just want to wrap it up because I want to make sure that you didn't come across as a hater. I'm not a hater. If anything, it's the opposite. We care so deeply for the sport and for all the people that have the same passion that share that as we do. We want everybody to be healthy, live a long, healthy life, have no aches, pains, God forbid, worse, organ problems, nothing like that. We want the best for everybody. And that's why we come out and say, let's start emphasizing more on shape, symmetry, and not so much on counting how many stripes somebody has in their glutes to determine the winner. You had 44 stripes and he only had 40. So you win.
Yeah, exactly.
So
and again, the judges, if a reset is needed, need to be there. The athletes will act accordingly, act accordingly to the demands as I did. Okay, I had a 31.5-inch waist when I competed. I think eventually hit up to about 32 inch when I went up to 254. But that was what I was told I needed to look like during my era. So the same thing can be communicated to the guys now. They will make the adjustments because they know that, listen, if I if I put on a certain amount of size, I lose my shape. You know, I think what Fitzwater,
Yeah.
I think he gained 12 pounds.
Yeah.
The 12 pounds he gained did not allow him to be as sharp as he was when I saw him in his first Olympia.
Right.
I mean, me and Jay were sitting there, we watched and said, man, I didn't even know. I'm looking at said, man, this guy looks great. And Jay said, yeah, he said, I've been in touch with him. I said, man, tell him I said he looks great. I love his balance, love his symmetry. And what does he do? Put on 12 additional pounds. He didn't need 12 additional pounds. You know, from 1984 to 1991, I put on 11 pounds. The integrity of his physique has been compromised when you do that. But who is saying you need to do it? It's the judging.
Well, it's, you know, people will only do what the judges reward. If the judges don't.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, like I said, all these divisions that have gone out of control, like women's physique, women's bodybuilding, well, that's because this is what the judges chose for the standard. If women got bigger and harder and grainier and nastier looking and the judges didn't reward that, they wouldn't have kept doing that. They were only doing what they had to do to win, because you look and see who beat you. Why did they beat me? What do I need to do to beat them next time? And that's all it is. They're just following a path to winning based on what they see as the best option. So
exactly.
A lot of food for thought there, guys. A lot of food for thought. Well, Lee, thank you so much for taking the time. I did want to get you on here to clarify all that, because last thing I want is for that to be all people see those quotes that were, I won't say taken out of context, but you know, I want people to know what the place you're coming from and how you actually do feel about the sport and about all the athletes and all the people around the world that share this crazy thing we do called bodybuilding. And you know, we love them. We want the best for everybody, and that's why we're trying to make or suggest changes. That's all.
Yeah, that's all we're doing, man. Listen, I love all the athletes, and man, I do anything for athletes. I still get them calling me, and so I recreate programs for them and make recommendations. Love you guys. I want to see them make lots of money. And one of the things I always emphasize, you know, when I'm doing my workshops, I say, look, guys, I got 8 Mr. Olympia trophies. I can't eat any of them. So while you're young in your career, be wise with your money, be wise with your health, because it's not going to last forever. And we don't make as much money as an NBA player, NFL player. We don't do that. So we got to be careful with all of those things I just mentioned. So I love you guys. Thanks, Ron, for having me on. And no, I'm not a hater. I'm a lover to the core.
Yes, sir. All right. That wraps it up for the Ron Line Report with 8-time Mr. Olympia Lee Haney. Thanks, everybody, for watching.